Hi everybody, so today I'm going to be explaining my model of a neuron and action potential. I've been really sick all week, so please just bear with me through this. So this is the model that I made out of clay. I just realized it's going to be inverted on camera, but oh well. So I have my cell body in here. The orange and pink part is my cell body, and then I have my dendrites right here. And then I have my axon right here, this whole part, and then my melon sheath parts right here. And then I have my terminal branches right here in the red, and then the terminal buttons right here in the yellow. Okay, and then for resting potential and excision, this occurs within the cell body right here, and resting potential is its normal but ready but not firing state. So just like its normal resting state, and the inside of the cell is negatively charged compared to the outside during this time. And then during excitation, this happens when a neuron receives a signal strong enough to fire a stimulus like a neurotransmitter or touch, and causes sodium channels to open. Sodium ions rush into the neuron, making the inside more positive. If the positive charge reaches the threshold, then an action potential is triggered throughout the neuron. And then how charges inside and outside the neuron change happens within the axon. And when they change changes in the inside of a neuron change when ions move in and out through ion channels in the cell membrane. When sodium ions enter the neuron, it becomes more positive, which is like excited, and when its potassium ions leave, it becomes more negative and resting again. And then when changes in the outside of a neuron happen, it's because ions move across the neuron's membrane during signaling, which is when sodium ions move into the neuron. The outside becomes more negative, and when the potassium ions move out of the outside, it becomes positive again. And then the all or nothing law, which happens also in the axon, is the law states that a neuron will either fire a full action potential or not fire at all. If the stimulus reaches the threshold, the neuron sends a complete signal, and if it does not reach the threshold, the signal is not sent. And then for the synapse, which is in the terminal branches, the red part, it is the small gap between two neurons where information is passed from one cell to another. When an electrical signal reaches the end of a neuron, it reaches the neurotransmitters that cross the synapse and bind it to the next neuron, allowing the signal to continue. And then the neurotransmitters, which are in the terminal buttons, are chemical messengers that transmit signals across the synapse from one neuron to another. They are released by one neuron across the synaptic gap and bind receptors on to the next cell to either excite or inhibit it. And then the potassinatic neuron is in the dendrites and the cell body in here, and it is a neuron that receives a signal at the synapse. It has receptors that bind neurotransmitters, which can either excite or inhibit the neuron and determine whether it will fire an action potential. And then the reuptake, which is in the axon, is a process where neurotransmitters are taken back into the presynaptic neuron after a signal is sent. This stops the signal and helps recycle neurotransmitters so the neuron is ready to communicate again. And then the excitatory versus inhibitory messages is within the dendrites of the cell body, and the excitatory messages increase the change that a neuron will fire by making the photosynthetic neuron more positive and closer to the threshold. Inhibitory messages decrease the change that a neuron will fire by making the neuron more negative and farther from the threshold. So that is my neuron and my action potential demonstration.